Hello, welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi, Menachos, Masechet Menachos, Daf 49, Omid 8. Tana as Zos Torahs Ha'ola, Riba Samech La. The Gemara answers, the Tana of that Brisa relies on the phrase, this is the law of the burnt offering, Ha'ola. Is it that which goes up on its firewood upon the altar all night until the morning, Leviticus 6:2, and seemingly superfluous general phrase which is interpreted homiletically to include. So what does that mean? Reba, include. The sage in Nida 40a to b disagree as to the interpretation of the verse cited in the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda interprets three of the terms in the verse, this, the, and it, as restricting the halacha that an offering brought onto the altar is not taken off. Consequently, he rules that this halacha does not apply to a burnt offering that is disqualified because it was slaughtered at night. A burnt offering is was spilled before it could be sprinkled on the altar, and a burnt offering that left the temple court. Conversely, Rabbi Shimon holds that the intention of this verse is to extend the applicability of this halacha to the three aforementioned cases as well as others, including a burnt offering that was left overnight off the altar, one that has become ritually impure, one that was slaughtered with the intent to perform sacrificial rites beyond the designated time or outside the designated area, and an offering whose blood was collected or sprinkled on the altar by individuals unfit to perform the temple service. Even Rabbi Shimon concedes that the verse contains a limitation, and therefore certain types of disqualified burnt offerings are brought down from the altar. This category includes an animal with which a person engaged in intercourse, an animal that was worshipped as a deity, or that was designated for idolatrous worship, an animal that was given as payment to a prostitute, an animal that was used to purchase a dog, an animal born of a forbidden mixture of various kinds, an animal that is a tuefa, an animal born by cesarean section, and an animal that has a blemish. The halacha that any item that ascends over upon the altar shall not descend from it, even if it's disqualified. The verse is that the actual source for the halacha of the Brisa. The verse is the actual source for the halacha of the Brisa, whereas the case of a private altar cited mainly in support of this ruling. Accordingly, the Brisa does not contradict the opinion of Rav Shimi Ba'ashi. The Gemara cites another discussion concerning the sheep of Shavuot. Rabbi Baba Huna taught a Brisa before Rav. In the case of the two sheep of Shavuot, where one slaughtered them for the sake of rams, Kivshei Aseres Shechatan L'Shum Eilim. If one slaughtered the two sheep of Shavuot for the sake of rams, they do not satisfy the obligation of the community. In according to the opinion of Rabba Baba Hana, and that's in the Rambam Sefer Hilchot Pesudei Makdoshin 15:16, and not for their own sake. They are valid offerings, but they do not satisfy the obligation of the owner, i.e., the community to sacrifice these offerings. Rav said to Rabba Baba Hana, that is not so. Rather, the sheep certainly satisfy the obligation of the community. Chesed said the statement of Rav is reasonable. Mishtaba Milse de Rav Chulu, later commentators explain that Rav Hista holds that the Brisa cited by Rabba Baba Hana before Rav is referring to a case where the priest misidentified the animal. If it was a simple case where the priest sacrificed the animal for the sake of a different offering, the Brisa would have stated explicitly that the sheep of Shavuot were slaughtered not for their own sake. The reason the offering remains valid is that the lambs were actually sacrificed for the sake of lambs. But if the priest had thought they were rams and sacrificed them for the sake of rams, the offering will be disqualified because even the erroneous uprooting of the identity of an offering takes effect. Conversely, Rabbi holds that the erroneous uprooting of the identity of an offering does not take effect. Understand the Brisa as referring to a case where the priest misidentified the animals as rams and therefore slaughtered them for the sake of rams, and holds according to the opinion of Rav Chazon Ish Taharat HaKodesh. Others suggest that Rav himself holds that the offering would satisfy the community's obligation even if the priest knew that they were lambs and knowingly slaughtered them for the sake of rams. The halacha is not in accordance with Rav in this regard. As Rav Chitz and Rabba disagree, the Brisa contradicts him, as Rabba Baba Hana points out, and that's from the Rashash on Yevamot 14a. In a case where one thought they were rams, elim rams, the Torah used the word lambs in reference to the sheep of Shavuot. In fact, the only difference between an animal considered in halacha to be a lamb and one considered to be a ram is age. In the first year of the animal's life is called a lamb, and once it is a year and 30 days old, it is called a ram. Between these times, it is defined as palges, which is no longer called a lamb, but is not yet called a ram, and is therefore not fit for any offering. When he slaughtered them, and nevertheless slaughtered them for the sake of lambs. In such a case, it makes sense that they satisfy the community obligation since the lambs were slaughtered for the sake of lambs. But in a case where he thought that they were rams when he slaughtered them, and therefore slaughtered them for the sake of rams, what's the footnote? Kisava einim ushchatan l'shum einim. If one thought that the two sheep of Shavuot were rams and slaughtered them for the sake of rams, the obligation of the community to sacrifice the offerings has been fulfilled. This is due to the fact that the state of the offering was uprooted in error, and the erroneous uprooting of the state of an offering is insignificant. This is according to the opinions of Rab and Rabbah. Rambam Sefer Avodah Hilchot Pesulim Makdoshin 15:16. They do not satisfy the community's obligation, even though they were actually lambs. This is due to the fact that the erroneous uprooting of the state of an offering constitutes uprooting, despite the fact that it was done in error. But Rabbah said the erroneous uprooting of the state of an offering does not constitute uprooting. Rabbah said, what's the footnote? Amar Rabbah. Some version of the text cite Rabbah instead of Rabbah, whereas Rabbah's name appears in this. Wherever Rabbah's name appears in this passage, we raise an objection to our own ruling concerning this halacha, from which it was taught in a Mishnah in Gittin 54a, in a case of priests who disqualified an offering through improper intention in the temple. HaKohanim should piglu b'mikdash. Priests who disqualified an offering through improper intention in the temple. The Rambam holds that if priests intentionally disqualified an offering with an improper intention, they are required to reimburse the owner, but if they did so unintentionally, they are exempt. The Ravid holds that even if they disqualified an offering with an improper intent intentionally, they are exempt, in accordance with the opinion that maintains that one is not liable for damage that is not externally evident. The case of Mishnah notes that this is also the opinion of the Ramban. That's from the Ramban, Sefer Nedichin Hilchot Hova Umazik 7:4, and see the Lechem Mishnah there. By expressing while sacrificing offering the intention to eat it after the appropriate time, if they did so intentionally, they are liable to pay the value of the offering to its owner, who must now bring another offering. It follows, therefore, if the priest did so unintentionally, they are exempt. And it is taught concerning this case in a Braita. Even though they slaughtered it with the improper intent unintentionally, the act of improper intention makes the offering pigul, despite the fact that they are exempt from paying damages. What are the circumstances in which this is the halacha? If we say that it's referring to a case where the priest knew that the offering was a sin offering, which is eaten only for 1 day and 1 night, and nevertheless he intended the offering be for the sake of a peace offering, which is eaten for 2 days and 1 night, and thereby his intention that it was that it be eaten after its appropriate time, is considered an unintentional act by the priest. Certainly they were acting intentionally. Rather, is it not referring to a case where the offering was a sin offering, which is eaten for only 1 day and 1 night, and the priest thought it was a peace offering, and therefore he intended the offering to be for the sake of a peace offering, which is eaten for 2 days and 1 night, and thereby his intention was that it be eaten after its appropriate time. And with regard to this case, the Tana taught that act of improper intention renders the offering pigul. Apparently, this proves that the erroneous uprooting of the state of an offering constitutes uprooting, contrary to the ruling of Rabbah. Abai said to Rabbah, There is no objection from this brisa, because actually it's referring to a case where the priest knew that it was a sin offering, and nevertheless he intended the offering to be for the sake of a peace offering, and his uprooting was done intentionally. Nevertheless, the brisa refers to the priest as acting unintentionally, because it is referring to circumstances where the priest says, i.e., he mistakenly thinks it is permitted to sacrifice the offering with his intent. Rabbi Zeva raises an objection to Rabba's opinion that erroneous uprooting of the Seder offering does not constitute uprooting. The Brisa teaches that Rabbi Shimon says all meal offerings from which the handful was removed not for their sake are entirely valid and have even satisfied the obligation of the owner, unlike animal offerings slaughtered but not for their sake, which do not satisfy the obligation of the owner. This is because meal offerings are not similar to animal offerings. But in the case of one who removes a handful from a meal offering prepared in a shallow pan for the sake of meal offering prepared in a deep pan, his mode of preparation proves that it is a shallow pan meal offering and not a deep pan meal offering. Since a meal offering prepared in a shallow pan is hard and one prepared in a deep pan is soft, his intention is plainly false. Similarly, if one removes a handful from a dry meal offering, the meal offering of a sinner, which has no oil, for the sake of meal offering mixed with oil, his intention is plainly false, as mode preparation proves that it's the dry meal offering. But with regard to animal offering, that is not so. There is one mode of slaughter for all of the offerings, one mode of collection of the blood for all of them, and one mode of sprinkling for all of them. Since the only fact that distinguishes between one type of offering and another is the intention of the individuals involved in the sacrifice, their intentions are significant. Consequently, if one of the sacrificial rites is performed for the sake of the wrong type of offering, the offering does not satisfy its owner's obligation. The Gemara clarifies, what are the circumstances to which Rabbi Shimon is referring? If we say that he's referring to a case where the priest knew that the meal offering was prepared in a shallow pan, and nevertheless he removed a handful from it for the sake of a meal offering in a deep pan, then although its mode of preparation proved that it was prepared in a shallow pan, what of it? In any case, he is constantly uprooting its stages of the shallow pan meal offering, changing it to a deep pan meal offering by means of his intention when he removes the handful. Rather, is it not referring to a case where the priest thought it was a meal offering prepared in a deep pan, and therefore removed the handful for the sake of meal offering prepared in a deep pan, but he was mistaken, as it was actually meal offering prepared in a shallow pan? It is specifically here, in this case, Rabbi Shimon rules that the offering remains valid, since the mode of preparation proves that it is a shallow pan meal offering, which indicates that in general, erroneous uprooting of the stage of an offering constitutes uprooting contrary to the ruling of Rabbah. Abai said to Rabbi Zera in response to his objection, this objection to Rabbah's opinion is inconclusive, because one can explain that the Bryce is actually referring to a case where the priest knew that the meal offering was prepared in a shallow pan, and nevertheless he removed a handful for the sake of a meal offering prepared in a deep pan. And with regard to that which you said in your question, although its mode of preparation proves that it is prepared in a shallow pan, what of it? Since he is constantly uprooting its identity, how can it satisfy its own obligation? Abai answered that Rava conforms to his line of reasoning, as Rava says, the merciful one disqualifies an offering due to improper intent, that it is not recognizably false, i.e., when the physical properties of the offering itself do not prove that the intent is mistaken. The merciful one does not disqualify an offering due to improper intent, and is recognizably false. Consequently, if one removed a handful from a deep, shallow pan meal offering for the sake of a deeper meal offering, even if it is subconsciously, the offering remains valid and satisfies the owner's obligation. Failing to sacrifice the daily offerings does not prevent sacrifice of the additional offerings. Failing to sacrifice the daily offerings does not prevent sacrifice of the additional offerings. Similarly, failing to sacrifice the additional offerings does not prevent sacrifice of the daily offerings, and failing to sacrifice some of the additional offerings does not prevent sacrifice of other additional offerings. And that's the Rambam Sefer Road Hilchot Tamidim Misafim 820. And likewise, failing to sacrifice the additional offerings does not prevent sacrifice of the daily offerings, and failing to sacrifice some of the additional offerings on a day when more than one is sacrificed, e.g., if it was both Shabbat and the new moon, does not prevent sacrifice of the other additional offering. If the priest did not sacrifice a lamb in the morning, lo higrivu keves baboker, if the community did not sacrifice the daily offering in the morning, they should nevertheless sacrifice a daily offering in the afternoon. This is the halacha whether the omission was unwitting or deliberate. This applies only if the service of the altar had already been initiated. If the altar had never been used for a sacrifice that may not be, they may not sacrifice the afternoon offering. And the service of a new altar may be initiated only by means of the morning offering. And that's the Rambam Sefer Voda Hilchot to medium himself from 112 as a daily offering. Nevertheless, they sacrifice a lamb in the afternoon as a daily offering, as failure to sacrifice one daily offering does not prevent the sacrifice of the other. In all of these cases, if they fail to sacrifice one offering, they should still sacrifice the other. Rabbi Shimon, when did this halacha apply? In Masai, it applies at the time when the failure to sacrifice the daily morning offering was because they were prevented from sacrificing it due to circumstances beyond their control, or they failed to sacrifice it unwittingly. But if the priest acted intentionally and did not sacrifice a lamb in the morning as a daily offering, they should not sacrifice a lamb in the afternoon as a daily offering. Incense was burned twice a day, half a measure in the morning and half a measure in the afternoon. If they did not burn the half measure of incense in the morning, if the community did not burn the half measure of incense in the morning, they should nevertheless sacrifice incense in the afternoon, even if the omission was deliberate. This is according to the first Tana. According to Lechem Mishnah, only a half measure of incense should be burned. The Rambam Sefer Voda Hilchot to medium himself in 3:1. They should burn half the measure in the afternoon. Rabbi Shimon said, and in such a case, the entire measure was sacrificed in the afternoon. The reason for the difference between the daily offerings and the incense is that the daily service on a new golden altar is initiated only with the burning of the incense of the spices. What does that mean? The daily service on a new golden altar is initiated only with the burning of the incense of the spice in the afternoon. This is according to the Tana of the Mishnah and the Ruling Rabbi on 50b, and not according to the Brisa cited on 50a. The Rambam Sefer Voda Hilchot to medium himself in 3:1. The language indicates that this is intended to be an explanation, but it is not clear which opinion it is explaining. Some hold that it is presented as an explanation for the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who maintained that the full measure of incense is sacrificed in the morning of the first half was not sacrificed in the morning. Rashi cited by Tosfot on 50a about Bein Gershom or Hagolah. Others hold it is presented as an explanation for the opinion of the rabbis, and there is a lacuna in the Mishnah. Accordingly, the Mishnah should include a comment clarifying that the rabbis are referring only to the daily offerings, but they concede in the case of the initiation of the services mentioned in the end of the Mishnah. The initiation of the service for the two altars differ from each other because the service of the altar of the burnt offering is initiated in the morning, whereas the service of a new golden incense altar is initiated in the afternoon. Tosfot on 50a, commentary attributed to the Rashba. Afternoon, at which time they would burn a full measure, and the daily service on a new altar of the burnt offering, on which the daily offerings were sacrificed, is initiated only with the daily morning offering. And use of a new table is initiated only with the arrangement of the shubed on Shabbat. Use of a new table is initiated only with the arrangement of the shubed on Shabbat. Rambam Sefer Voda Hilchot to medium himself in 5:3. And use of a new candelabrum was initiated only with the kindling of its 7 lamps in the afternoon. Use of a new candelabrum is initiated only with the kindling of its 7 lamps in the afternoon. Rambam Sefer Voda Hilchot to medium himself. The Mishnah teaches that the daily offerings and the additional offerings each do not prevent fulfillment of any of the mitzvah with the other. Concerning this, Rabbi Chia bar Avin raised the dilemma before Rabbi Chisda. In the case of a community that did not have the resources to sacrifice both the daily offerings and the additional offerings, which of them takes precedence over the other? The Gemara clarifies, what are the circumstances to which Rabbi Chia bar Avin is referring? If he says he's referring to a case where the choice is between the daily offerings of that day and the additional offerings of that same day, it's obvious that the daily offerings are given preference, as the sacrifice of the daily offerings is more frequent than the sacrifice of the additional offerings, which are sacrificed only on special occasions, and daily offerings are also sanctified. Tarid Kudash. Rashi mentions two explanations of the statement. One is that when the Gemara refers to the offerings as sanctified, it means that it means that the sanctity of the day of Shabbat of a festival elevates the sanctity of all the offerings that are sacrificed that day. According to this explanation, both the daily offering and the additional offering that are sacrificed in Shabbat or festival are equally sanctified. The Gemara's point here is that where the daily offerings is more frequent than the additional offerings and is sanctified due to the day, the additional offering has only one of these two factors, which is that it is sanctified due to the day. Consequently, the daily offering takes precedence. Rashi's second explanation is that the fact that the daily offering is sacrificed before the additional offering indicates that it has greater sanctity than the additional offering. Consequently, the Gemara's point is that since the daily offering is both more frequent and more sanctified than the additional offering, it takes precedence. Rather, Rav Chia Ba'avin Sari must be referring to a case where they have enough animals for the daily offerings of today, and also for either the daily offerings for tomorrow. Tamidim de Macha. The Ra'im Horowitz on Sukkah 25b comments that this is a dilemma only because there is an obligation to inspect for 4 days an animal that is to be sacrificed as the daily offering to ensure that it does not develop a blemish. Therefore, it can be claimed that the mitzvah concerning the next day's daily offering begins even before the day upon which it is sacrificed. But generally, when one has a choice between performing a mitzvah on that day or a different mitzvah on a later day, you'll be obligated to perform the mitzvah on that day, or the additional offerings for today. In such a case, the daily offerings are given preference since their sacrifice is more frequent, or perhaps the additional offerings are given precedence because they are considered more sacrificed because they are sacrificed on a holy day. Now, Chisda said to Rav Chia Ba'avin, the resolution to this dilemma can be derived from that which you learned in the Mishnah. Failure to sacrifice the daily offerings does not prevent sacrifice of the additional offerings. And likewise, failure to sacrifice the additional offerings does not prevent sacrifice of the daily offerings. And failure to sacrifice some of the additional offerings does not prevent sacrifice of the other additional offerings. What are the circumstances to which the Mishnah is referring? If we say that it's referring to a case where the temple treasury has all the animals necessary for both offerings, and the only question is in terms of sacrificing one before the other, isn't it taught in the Bible? From where is it derived that no sacrifice should precede the sacrifice of the daily offering of morning? It's prohibited to sacrifice any offering before the daily morning offering in accordance with the Bible. The Bible continues. It is derived from that which the verse states. When the fire upon the altar shall be kept burning thereby, it shall not go out, and the priest shall kindle wood on it every morning, and he shall lay the burnt offering in order on it, and it shall cause the fat of the priest having to go in smoke upon it, Leviticus 6:5. And Rabbi says, an explanation of this derivation of the Bible that the term the burnt offering with the definite article is referring to the first burnt offering of the day, which is the daily offering. Consequently, one may not sacrifice additional offerings before the daily offering. And that's the end of the Omid. I wish you a very good day and all the best. Bye.